everyone, today is 26th Thursday, May 2022, and welcome to the first edition of Nigerian Today. Last time we discussed the way to economic development. Today we'll look at another important factor that affects economic development, which is democracy system. Rachel, please read the news.
The next president will be from the Southwest. Vanguard report says pioneer interim national chairman of the All Progressive Congress (APC), the former governor of Osun State, Chief Bisi Akande, has said that the southwest geopolitical zone of the country would produce the next president, saying the region was united. He explained that the stakeholders had a fruitful and mutual deliberation. Leadership report says the 2023 presidential polls is proving to be a tough battle by the day as leaders of the Southwest geopolitical zone and presidential aspirants from the zone rose from a meeting recently with a firm resolve to produce the next president of Nigeria.
Rachel, did you see the news which says Nigeria's vice president has announced his candidacy?
Premium Time reports Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has declared his intention to run for the office of president. Mr. Osinbajo from Ogun State seeks to succeed his principal, President Muhammadu Buhari, whose second term in office ends in May 2023. The African report says, after weeks of denial and leaks, Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has announced his candidacy for presidential race, but the ambition of his political benefactor, Bola Tinubu, continues to complicate his path.
Democracy has won for itself a household name across the length and breadth of all liberal and not so liberal societies across the world today. The concept has gained prominence largely because it is believed to be a sine qua non for growth, development and sustainability of the body politic as opposed to a military autocracy. Democracy is therefore a concept that is keen to people's interests, aspirations, and collective desires for change. The culture of democracy is any political setting reinforces itself in the overall benefits of the people to enjoy from the system.
So what is democracy's way to Nigeria?
Democracy Day is 12 June, a national public holiday in Nigeria. Until 6 June 2018, it was held annually on May 29th. Democracy marks the day the military handed over power to an elected civilian government in 1999, marking the beginning of the longest continuous civilian rule since Nigeria's independence from the colonial rule in 1960. Nigerian politics takes place within a framework of a federal, presidential, representative democratic republic in which executive power is exercised by the government. Legislative power is held by the federal government and the two chambers of the legislature, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The importance of democracy includes freedom of political expression, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and internet. Democracy are considered important to ensure that voters are well informed, enabling them to vote according to their own interests.
How was Nigerian democracy's situation?
Nigerian democracy is in peril as country descends into lawlessness. In 1999, the year it returned to civilian rule, Nigeria adopted a democratic system of governance. It also publicly proclaimed an adherence to democracy. The new turn was widely embraced by Nigerians. It was viewed as key to promoting legitimacy, changing cultures of exclusion, and ensuring better decision-making. Such goals were unattainable under the military regime. But despite over 2 decades of civilian democracy, inequalities in distribution of power and resources have continued to impact the people's right to equal protection and due process. This state of affairs disproportionately affects Nigeria's poorest people. Participation in decision-making was also denied. Protesters made several demands on the government. Instead of listening to their demands, the government ordered the Nigerian army to confront them. At least 12 unarmed protesters were shot and killed. This situation showed that Nigerians are often denied the right to participate in the making of decisions that affect them. This is just as they are denied access to justice. Nigerians are often unable to obtain redress in courts. In such situations without access to justice, the procedural gate for the enforcement of fundamental rights is lacking. In other words, Nigeria has not actually achieved true democracy. Its flawed system of governance has had serious implications for its social and political development, economic growth, peace, and unity.
America claims to be the most democratic country in the world. Let's take a look at American democracy.
Let's take a look at the American democracy. Democracy means the rule of the people, but Americans do not fully agree about who belongs to the people. Alexis de Tocqueville declares that political equality, pervasive in America, and provides the strong foundation for democracy, a system of government in which sovereignty resides with the people and decisions are made by majority rule.
What is American democracy?
The United States is a representative democracy. This means that the government is elected by the citizens. Citizens vote for their government officials. The officials represent the citizens' ideas and concerns in government. Voting is the only way to participate in American democracy. Americans distinguish sharply between democracy in principle and in practice. There is near universal agreement that American system is not working well, in particular, that it is not delivering the results people want. This is troubling because most people value democracy for its fruits, not just its roots. Disagreements about who is truly American are part of a broader cleavage in American culture. 70% of Republicans believe that Americans' culture and way of life have changed for the worse since the 1950s. While 63% of Democrats believe that they have changed for the better, strong majorities of Republicans agree that things have changed so much that they often feel like a stranger in my own country. That today America is in danger of losing its culture and identity, and that the American way of life needs to be protected for foreign influences. Majorities of Democrats reject these propositions.
What are the specific aspects of American democracy?
The United States is a representative democracy. The executive branch is one of the three branches of the U.S. government. It includes the president, vice president, presidential advisors, and cabinet, 15 executive departments, as well as hundreds of other bureaus and agencies. The U.S. government employees within the executive branch play a variety of critical roles, such as issuing passports, maintaining public lands, printing money, monitoring the economy, and supporting health programs. The Supreme Court is part of the judicial branch, one of the three branches of the U.S. government, which gave its jurisdiction over all federal laws. The Senate is part of the legislative branch, which has the power to make laws. The Senate was designed to give each state, no matter the size of its population, equal voting power. The House of Representatives is part of the legislative branch, which has the power to make laws. It was designed to be closely connected to the will of the people.
What are the problems in American democracy?
Over the years, democracy in the U.S. has become alienated and degenerated, and it has increasingly deviated from the essence of democracy and its original design. Problems like money politics, identity politics, wrangling between political parties, political polarization, social diversion, racial tension, and wealth gap have become more acute. All this has weakened the functioning of democracy in the U.S. The U.S. has often used democracy as a pretext to meddle in other countries' internal affairs, causing political chaos and social unrest in these countries, and undermining world peace and stability and social tranquility in other countries. This makes many people in the US and other countries wonder if US is still a democracy. The world needs to take a closer look at the current state of democracy in the US, and the US itself should also conduct some soul searching.
Let's also talk about European Union democracy.
In the European Union, there are two sources of democratic legitimacy: the European Parliament, chosen by the electorate of the individual EU countries, and the Council of the European Union, the Council of Ministers, together with the European Council of Heads of National Governments that represents the people. In the past decade, EU politicians and scholars have debated the nature of the so-called democratic deficit in the European Union. In the eyes of its critics, the EU policy process is dominated by unelected officials from the European Commission and members' governments, negotiating in a process that is close and distant from the European electorate, and in which the directly elected European Parliament plays only a secondary role. Democracy remains the most common form of government across Europe, yet democratic erosion, backsliding, and deepening autocratization present growing challenges. For more than a decade, a majority of European established democracies have seen their democratic policies stagnate rather than improve. Some have experienced erosions of democratic processes and fundamental rights, and several others have deteriorated to the point where they can hardly be qualified as democracies.
What are the specific aspects of European Union democracy?
The European Union and its democratic aspects are based on the rule of law. Every action that is taken by the EU is founded on treaties that have been approved voluntarily and democratically by all EU member countries. The EU has an agreement that is binding on all its member countries, and that agreement is a treaty that sets out its objectives, the role of EU institutions, how they make their decisions, and the relationship between EU, its member countries, and its global counterparts. The EU supports democratization and fundamental freedoms in partner countries by encouraging broad participation in political decision-making and local ownership of sectors that are key to sustainable development. Depending on the particular objectives of each action, EU works with a wide range of partners, including grassroots organization, international parliamentary association, advocacy and watchdog organization, electoral bodies, political foundations, parliaments, and the media. The first and most important EU objective was the establishment of a common market.
What are the problems the European Union face?
The democratic problems of European integration are well explored. The phenomenon is frequently labeled as a democratic deficit of the community. Europe lost confidence in the path it was on towards greater integration, solidifying of democratic gains and a market system. Negotiations between London and Brussels have damaged the Union's standing and energized other countries, such as Poland, to defy Brussels. Member states have transferred powers to the European Union. As such, these powers escape the control of national parliaments. This goes hand in hand with the lack of real transitional EP election, the lack of EU-wide parties, and the EU being too remote from its citizens, as Simon Hicks and Andres Foliseda point out. If we look around the world, in the corner of the East, China has different way of democracy. China reforms are evolving very rapidly. A unique political development model is not only distinct from the traditional Soviet Union socialist model, but also diverges from the Western liberal democratic style. The Chinese political model challenges the classical liberal democratic theory in Western literature and raises questions such as, is democracy a common value for all humankind? Does a non-liberal form of democracy really exist? These concerns also attract the most heated debates about Chinese democratic reforms within Chinese itself since the founding of the nation in 1949. Nevertheless, we must admit that the Chinese way of political development, especially the political democratization, is extremely different from the Western democratic tradition. Differences are natural and not automatically antagonistic given the different contexts and cultures from which Eastern and Western civilization have arisen. China's democracy is a democracy in which the overwhelming majority of the people act as masters of state affairs. Currently, political scientists do not recognize China as a democracy. Instead, they categorize China as an authoritarian state, which has been characterized as a dictatorship. During the 21st century, China has used technology to conduct mass surveillance of its citizens.
What are the specific aspects of China's democracy?
The National People's Congress and the local People's Congresses at various levels are the organ through which the people exercise state power. Democratic centralism shall be practiced in the National People's Congress and the local People's Congress at various levels, as well as in all other state organs. It also clearly stipulated that all power in the People's Republic of China belongs to the people. China's democracy is the people's democracy under the leadership of the CPC. Without the Communist Party, there would be no new China, nor would there be people's democracy. This is a fact that has been borne out by history. The Chinese people won the right to be masters of the state only after many years of arduous struggle under the leadership of the CPC. China's democracy is a democracy guaranteed by the People's Democratic Dictatorship. Under the People's Democratic Dictatorship, on the one hand, democracy of the widest scope is practiced among the people. Human rights are respected and ensured, and state power is in the hands of the people and serves the interests of the people. Let's also take a look at the problems in China's democracy system. The flaws in China's political system are obvious. The government doesn't even make a pretense of holding national elections and punishes those who openly call for multi-party rule. The press is heavily censored and the internet is blocked. Top leaders are unconstrained by the rule of law. Voters don't choose among political parties. Instead, they directly nominate candidates. China also does not implement a complete checks and balances to separate legislative, executive, and judicial bodies. But there is a relative independence among legislation, administration, and judiciary branches, which are divided into three separate systems. China is among few contemporary party-led dictatorships to not hold any direct elections at the national level. The competitive nature of the election is highly constrained by the communist parties. Monopoly on power in China. Limitations on free speech and government interference with the elections. Democracy is also an important mechanism for economic development. Under the democratic system of the United States, economic development has followed the road of market-oriented and free development, while China's democratic system has led China out of the road of socialist economic development with China characteristics.
Nigerian fits which part?
Nigeria and the United States have the same representative democracy. Nigerian politics takes place within a framework of a federal, presidential, representative democratic republic in which executive power is exercised by the government. Legislative power is held by the federal government and the two chambers of the legislature, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Same goes with the United States.
So what is the conclusion?
Democracy is an outcome of the development of political civilization of mankind. It is also the common desire of people all over the world. Democracy of a country is generated internally, not imposed by external forces. Democracy is a common value shared by all humanity. It is a right for all nations, not a prerogative reserved to a few. Democracy takes different forms and there is no one-size-fits-all model. It would be totally undemocratic to measure the diverse political system in the world with a single yardstick or examine different political civilization from a single perspective. The political system of a country should be independently decided by its own people. The good news is that there is much the government can do as individuals. Some small steps to take to honor democratic principles. These include the following. Think for ourselves by embracing our independence. Relentlessly pursue civility. Accept that we all have biases and blind spots. Promote good citizenship. Monitor and assess the quality of civic education in our schools. Support students, self-government programs in churches and civic groups, and continually find ways to help our young people learn the principle of citizenship and become great citizens. Celebrate elections, register to vote, study the candidates and ballot issues, cast a vote for every race in every election, volunteer on campaigns, and even consider running for office. Take civic actions, join civic groups, volunteer for non-profit and community projects, monitor your local government and serve on local government and non-profit boards. Governments must restore public trust in the information order by ensuring that their laws are aligned with and in compliance with the law. Governments should submit themselves to independent post-pandemic state of emergency audits, including through facilitation by multilateral bodies such as United Nations, Council of Europe. Please drop your comments, questions, suggestions, and solutions below, as we'll be taking them one after the other to analyze. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel page, Nigeria Today. I am Fumi Ajayi. Thanks for watching.